Hello, my friends. Welcome to a brand new episode of the Christ and Coffee podcast, uniting Christians one conversation at a time. My name is Dr. Hai Kurlopian, and today we have a powerful testimony to share. I love my theology, but what I love even more is an actual story of someone's life being completely transformed and redeemed by the love and grace of Jesus Christ. Today we have such a story by having Arman Kayamkcian on the program to discuss his brand new book, He Calls Me Redeemed, a memoir of childhood sex abuse, heroin addiction, hope, and redemption. But before we begin, can you do me a favor? Please like us on Facebook, subscribe to us on YouTube, and follow us on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. With that said, please grab a cup of coffee and enjoy today's Christ-centered conversation. Hey Armin, it's so good to meet you. We made some phone call conversations prior to setting up this podcast, but it's so good to see you and to congratulate you on the release of your brand new book.
Thank you so much, man. And the pleasure's all mine, by the way. Thank you for having me.
Of course, of course. So what made you decide to write a book in the first place?
Yeah, so it's been a long process. About 13 years ago, I got off of a New Jersey Transit train, Long Branch, New Jersey, and I was coming from Brooklyn. And, when I got off that train, I was starting my life completely over again at 27, 28 years old. And, I had written a list down of things I wanted to accomplish. And back then, that list looked like close all my open court cases, finish probation. I owed every township money. I had problems on the street. I had, law enforcement in different towns, that were still having issues with me, et cetera. So, it was all the odds in the world you could think of stacked against me. I had no car. I had no license. I had all these things that I wanted to accomplish. I wrote them all down on a list. I even wrote meet a wife, have children, stuff like that. And at the bottom of the list, I wrote something down that was really more of a wish or a dream than a goal, because it seemed so impossible at the time. And it was to write a book about how Jesus Christ saved my life. And I had been, thinking about that over the years. And, the Lord started moving in my life and doing all these different things. And I always had it rolling around in the back of my head that it was something I wanted to do, but I didn't know, what type of book I wanted to, how I wanted to write it, what it was going to be, et cetera. And after my father passed a couple of years ago, you do a lot of deep thinking. My father was my best friend. It was a difficult loss. And after I lost him and it really put things into perspective, and gave me the opportunity to really sit down and say, okay, I know what I'm going to write. I know how I'm going to write,
Amazing, amazing. And what's your educational level?
Yeah, so I'm a high school dropout. Dropped out of high school end of my junior year. And I went back later on and got my diploma. A couple college classes I took after that. But yeah, I dropped out of high school.
Was writing always a passion, or it was just something that...
Well, I was into music years ago. My father was very, very artistic. He was a musician, incredible guitar player. He was always writing lyrics, and I was always writing lyrics and poems and, different things. And the extent of my writing was really my own, poetry, different lyrics to songs and things like that. And, letters to family. Other than that, that's really it.
That's amazing. And it's a memoir, correct? That's the genre?
Yes.
But and you wrote it in a very interesting way. Can you explain it? Like, what's the chapter and the framework of this memoir?
Sure. Yeah. So in the introduction, I explain how, when I was a kid, I grew up in Asbury Park. Partially, my family has owned a building there for about 40 something years, and it's called the Armenian Royal Hotel. When I was a kid, it was fully functional, like full dining room with belly dancers and the whole thing. My father used to play the bouzouki on stage. I mean, it was a really cool place to grow up. Tons of elderly Armenians used to come stay with us for the summertime. It's just a really fun place. It's condos now. They made it into condos. But when I was a kid, there were 3 floors. And in the wintertime, when it was, dead of winter, it was completely, vacant. And I would have the opportunity as a young boy to go through the rooms And I would look through the rooms. I'd look at, the paintings on the wall, paying special attention to the fabrics on the bed, the paintings, the ashtrays, the glasses, the little soap, all the little things that we had in the hotel. And I don't know why I did this except for just, juvenile curiosity, but it was something that was fascinating to me. And I spent a lot of time just looking through the rooms and thinking to myself. And I thought it would be cool to place the book into rooms rather than chapters, with the idea of walking the reader through the rooms of my memory and taking you on a tour with me through these memories that I thought I'd forgotten.
That's amazing. We both share that in common. We were Armenians. I grew up every summer. I didn't visiting my uncle in the Jersey Shore, Bradley Beach, which is two beaches over from Asbury. And then in between is this like Christian Mecca called Ocean Grove, where historically it was founded because pastors from New York City needed a place to vacation, and then it turned into a beach town. And then Asbury Park, for those who don't know, this is the birthplace of Bruce Springsteen, the Stone Pony. But it's weird because there's this there used to be this Armenian cultural aspect, and it seems like your family's business was like one of the main reasons why that was the case.
Absolutely. Yes, it was. And it was, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Just between both of us, like it's crazy how reality television has destroyed our identity, with the Kardashians misrepresenting Armenian culture and the Jersey Shore, who are mostly people from Long Island, by the way, misrepresenting what life is really like on the Jersey Shore. But I think it's just hysterical that like both of those shows blew up, and it's just like your home place,
I'll tell you, it just happened to me yesterday that somebody said we went for my wife's 20-week appointment for the baby. My wife's pregnant with a third son.
Congratulations.
Thank you, brother. Thank you. And so we're in there in the appointment, and came out that I was Armenian, and the tech that was doing the sonogram said, "Oh, something about Kardashian." So it's like right away people make the. And the other thing I'm thinking with the Jersey Shore, I have family members in Montreal, on my Armenian side, and they came to visit when we had our wedding, and all they could think of is Jersey Shore, Jersey. That's what they think of, And long story short, when you go to visit them, it's like the most hospitable people ever, like mint on your pillow, like bed and breakfast almost. And they came to visit us, and we went out after the wedding. We were having a good time. Everybody was celebrating, and my wife's family, a couple people in her family, got in a little bit of an altercation. Next thing you know, we got kicked out of the place we were, and so my family will forever remember that. But it was like full on Jersey Shore experience for them, So
your other half is what's the other ethnic?
Italian.
Okay, so that's a lot of the Jersey Shore cast is Italian. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Too?
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
you got a double whammy then, like more so. Okay, amazing.
Yeah, man.
Can you describe Asbury Park? Because I remember it pretty ghetto. It used to be like wonderful. There was like a fire, riots or something, and now it's picked up steam recently, right?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. So years ago, like you said, this was the place where people would come from around the country to go to vacation. It was the place. It was really beautiful, and the the shore itself. There's the convention hall where they would have all kinds of concerts and different things going on, and they have a casino on the other side of the boardwalk that was a big draw for people, and it was really beautiful from all the pictures I've seen. Like gardens everywhere, really gorgeous. My family's hotel, was functioning during the time where it was still very, very nice. And then over the years, there were riots and different things. And, the town definitely deteriorated a little bit. I apologize. My voice is a little.
No worries, brother.
But yeah, so when I was growing up, it was a bit of a ghost town. And like when I was, little, 5, 6, 7, the hotel was fully functioning. And, like I explained before. But then, as I got a little bit older, maybe around, I would say 10, 11, 12, I remember it just being, really like a ghost town and like you're saying, run down and low income housing across the street next to us, et cetera. So it was, interesting in that way.
Yes. So
And
what was
now
that
there's been a
like?
revitalization.
What was
Yeah,
that
that
like?
was interesting.
What was your spiritual upbringing in the midst of all that too?
So, I talk about some of this in the book. We weren't every Sunday. I mean, my father's side, Armenian Apostolic, and we weren't at church every Sunday. We went periodically. My father, from a young age, I mean, I can remember, and I wrote about it in the book. He sat me down and asked me, who do you love more, me or God? And I wanted to tell him I loved him more because I wanted to make sure he knew how much I loved him. And he, immediately told me, no, absolutely not. Always, God is going to come first in your life. It's interesting because good friends of mine who know me really well, who know my father really well, have said to me when they read the book that they said, I don't know if you know what you did for your father in this book, but you really humanized him in the way that, this book really, I think explains the human condition in the sense that we're all a mixture of good and bad things. And my father, while he wasn't perfect, he taught me to love God, to honor God, to put God first. But we didn't live that out in the way that we should have, either of us.
So tell me about that. So when did you kind of, because the book is primarily about surviving abuse, drug addictions. So what began that trajectory of that kind of world?
Yeah, so I mean, I had a really, as far as I can remember, really fun childhood. Really adventure filled.
Yeah.
Just a lot of fun. I just remember it being really, really great. And about the age of 10, I started to be abused. I was sexually abused by someone close to the family on my mother's side, and that really just destroyed me as a young person. And I didn't know what to do with that. I don't think a lot of 10-year-olds do. I didn't tell anybody. I didn't want to destroy the family. There was a lot of different reasons why you keep it in. But that really set me off on a path where you're trying to cope, and you're 10 and you don't have anybody that you could talk to about it. And I tried to comfort myself with eating, just different ways of coping with it. As I got a little bit older, 12, and trying to deal with what happened to me, I was cutting myself. I got into some occult different types of things, and brought me into some weird places. And you know, by the time I was 14, 15 years old, high school freshman year, I'm the guy in high school I want to be the bad guy. I want to be a gangster. I want to be the guy that's selling pot, to the kids in the bathroom. I can remember one of the best friends that I have. The way we met is in freshman year in high school. I was selling nickel bags, $5 bags to people, and I tried.
And you're not talking about the band right here.
No, we're not talking about the band.
Okay.
And I tried to sell him a $5 bag for $10. And he was a new kid. He came from another school. So I tried to hustle him. And he came to me at the end of the day and stood up to me and said, I want my $5 back. That's not fair, whatever. And I really liked that he stood up to me, and we became really, really great friends. He's still my friend till this day. He's actually a police officer. And so it's funny when we think back to these things. But anyway, that's the guy I was in high school. Troubled kid, chip on my shoulder. I wanted to be the tough guy. A lot of that was just a facade. I was trying to, I was really just a scared 10-year-old kid up until the time I was 28. That's really who I was. I just was hiding it, and doing the best I could on the street to make people think I was, I was really just trying to mask everything.
Wow. So, what leads you to leave high school altogether? What made you a high school dropout?
Yeah. So, well, I had a lot of problems in high school. Obviously, like I said, I was a drug dealer, and I was, doing all these, kinds of things, and that brings all kinds of trouble with it. And got in trouble a few times. I obviously I wasn't the best student, although teachers said I was intelligent. I loved history. I did well in history, without studying. I always was very interested in history. But anyway, by the time my end of my junior year, I actually was with a girl back then, and she had some trouble at home as well, and my mother let her move in with us. Probably not the best decision, with the agreement that we were going to live in separate rooms, and it didn't work out the way that my mother planned. And I was basically married at 16, 17 or whatever. That's how I felt. And this girl ended up getting kicked out of school. It was the end of my junior year. And, I wanted to just move out, start my life. And I thought that was a good decision back then. So I said, you know what? I'm going to drop out. Me and her, we're going to get an apartment and we're going to just start life. And that's what we did. And it didn't go too well.
Oh, wow. Well, and are you making money but through drug dealing or?
Yeah. So what happens then is I drop out of school. I moved out of my mother's house on my 18th birthday. I moved into Neptune, apartment in Neptune, New Jersey on 11th Avenue. Not the best neighborhood. Um, Me and the girl didn't last very long. I won't get into the details of it just for her, whatever. But it's in the book. Some of this stuff is in the book. But when she left, I was there by myself. I'm 18 years old, and I'm in this apartment. I have no job or anything. I think I was working with my dad part time, but I linked up with some people I knew from way back, and I started selling narcotics. So a little bit of a step up from what I was doing in high school. We experimented with things in high school, but I wasn't really full time. This is what I'm doing. I'm selling cocaine, heroin, ecstasy, PCP, full time. That's all I did. So that began a whole nother escalation of things in my life and problems with the law, et cetera.
And so when was like a pivotal moment where like this is my career? Like what came? Was there a defining moment where you're like, all right, this is who I am?
I think I was always wanting to be that guy. Always, I looked up to when I was a kid. I have an uncle, and I wrote about him in the book. And I don't know if he'll get mad at me or not for talking about, but he has an interesting past, and we'll just say that. And he was a guy that when he used to come around, he used to travel all over, and he used to bring me money from different countries. That you come back from. Suave guy, tall, good looking, dark hair. He spoke like 5, 6 different languages, and he was a gangster. He was an old time real gangster. And I looked at him and I said, yeah, I like that guy. I want to be him. And he was half of the time he was doing okay, and then other times he was like sleeping on our couch and coming to work with my dad to try to make a couple extra bucks, because that's the life of a gangster a lot of times. I looked up to those characters, the movies, Goodfellas, and all these types of things. Scarface. I must have watched those movies 1,000 times. You wanted to be these guys. Those were the guys that had the respect. These are the guys that get into girls, the cars, the clothes, the swag. So that's what you wanted to be. And I didn't know better. So I just said, yeah, I'm going to do this, and I went all in. I'm really grateful that I didn't grow up in LA or, New York, where like on my Italian side, if I would have grown up like in an Italian mob entrenched neighborhood, I don't think I probably would not be alive. Or, if I was, with like Armenian power or something in LA, there's no way I think I'd be alive, because I was the kid that was fully susceptible to doing whatever it took. I wasn't with guys that were very violent. We were, back then, people really they fought it out, which I'm grateful for the most part. There were shootings, and I was around some murderers, but for the most part, people fought things out, and it wasn't what it could have been. So I'm really glad that I grew up in Asbury. It was a little bit of a more calm place to be.
Yeah. And so like during this whole season from pretty much 18 to 28, you're selling drugs. Are you how many times have you been arrested?
Yeah, so I've been arrested. I would say anywhere from five to
About, yeah.
six, 5 to 6 times, maybe 6 to 8 times, depending on. But I never really did any time by God's grace. I never had to do any time. I got locked up a few times and went away for like a couple days here or there, whatever.
Okay.
But nothing, no long stints in prison or anything, which I'm very grateful for.
And so are you also using it as you're dealing or
So, in that type of a lifestyle, for the most part, the guys that I was with at that time, if you did any, certain drugs were off limits. So heroin, cocaine, if they knew that you were doing those things, or crack, if they knew that you were using those drugs, they weren't going to deal with you on a business level, a money level. And we're talking small time street dealing. I don't want
Yeah,
to, but a lot of people wouldn't deal with you if you're doing those things. So, uh, I'm doing ecstasy at this time. I'm doing, I'm smoking a lot of pot, ecstasy. I'm drinking a little bit, but not really. Alcohol was never a thing for me. I was very interested in, PCP, did a lot of PCP. These things were almost like acceptable for whatever reason, doing what I was doing. And then I would say about 25, 26, I started doing a little bit of cocaine here and there, and hiding it, but just doing a little bit while I was doing my, whatever I was doing. And then once I got into heroin, sniffing heroin, it went from sniffing heroin to smoking heroin to shooting heroin, and I document all that in the book. It's interesting how that all happened, and I write about that. But I think it's a really good thing for young people to read this book in their teenage years, because you can see the progression. You can really see. It's like in Psalms when he says, first, I'm trying to think. I'm drawing a blank. First, the psalmist is walking, then he's sitting, or he's walking, then he's standing, then he sits down. And I think that's Psalm 1. Psalm 1. So, there's a progression. So I think kids would do well to read the book and understand that the things that they think are just innocent things are not innocent, and that there's a progression to this.
yeah, absolutely. So you're living this lifestyle for about a decade, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then is there like, do you believe in God during this whole time, or is it more of a what's going on? Because you're from I guess from both sides. Like every Armenian, every Italian probably believes in God. But
Mm-hmm.
what was your relationship with God during this time?
Yeah, it's such an interesting thing. So, by the way, it came back to me. Blessed is the man that walks not in the counsel of the ungodly, nor stands in the path of sinners, nor sits in the seat of the scornful, but his delight is in the law of the Lord. It just came back to me, so I wanted to reference what I was saying. But yeah, during that time, it's really interesting. I was working at a carpet warehouse during, from the time I was, mid-20s. I was doing what I was doing, but I also had gotten this job, and I was there for 4 or 5 years. Really,
That is such a stereotype, by the way, an Armenian working in the carpet industry. Like,
absolutely. No, my life was so intertwined with carpet from the time I was young with my dad. He was a carpet
yeah,
installer. And yeah, it's a lot to say about that in the book too. It's an interesting thing, but yeah, so I'm working for this really amazing Jewish family. They've had a business here locally in Ocean Township forever. Fox Floors is the name. And I was there for about 4 or 5 years. And while I was working there, I remember being in the warehouse, and I had a Bible in there. I can remember reading, scripture and reading in the book of Revelation, and was fascinated with that. And yeah, I did believe in God during that time, but just, completely disconnected. Like, God, you're there and I'm here, and I don't know, I don't know what to say about it, but, that's just a complete disconnection.
so it seems like the turning point happened when you were 28. Correct? So what can you walk me through what led you to the disconnect to actual connection?
Absolutely, yeah. So this is the greatest part of the story, and this part, and it's interesting to talk about the stuff that led up to it, but it's so much more interesting to talk about the stuff after it, because this is the power of Jesus Christ in a person's life to completely, radically transform every facet of a person's life, no matter where they've been, who they are, what they've done. So, I'm strung out on heroin. I'm on the street. I'm overdosing. I'm, running around like a maniac. I'm stealing things, robbing people, getting into trouble, stealing from drug dealers, making people very angry with me. And I'm at the point where I'm suicidal. I've been locked up in detoxes and rehabs all over New Jersey. And, I ended up in what my mother talked me into going to this place. It's a very interesting place. It's called Keswick Colony of Mercy. And this place is the oldest live-in rehabilitation center in the country. It's been there since the late 1800s. It was started by a Christian man, a wonderful man named William Rawes. And he had a vision that God gave him to start this place called the Colony of Mercy. And what it is a place where people can come and get to know Jesus Christ. And people, countless people from the late 1800s to now have been saved and been cleansed of their addiction and gotten to know Jesus Christ at this place. It's an amazing place. So I had gotten an opportunity to go there. I was there for about a week. I got kicked out because I snuck heroin in with me when I went. So I was shooting dope in the bathroom, and I was clean for about a week. I had run out. I'm there for a week. They found out, I guess people were talking about it. There was, somebody told somebody, and they brought me in from the work program one day and they said, "Hey, is this true?" And I said, I felt like I've been running from everybody and lying to everybody for so long. I'm like, I just got to be honest. I felt a little bit like Achan, by the way, because I told the truth. And I told them what was going on, and they said, "Well, look, we can't have that here. You got to go." So they asked me to leave that day. I went back out on the street, and I was worse than ever before. And I'm out, for like probably 6 months. I guess this was 6, 7 months after that. And I'm thinking about suicide a lot, on a pretty regular basis, because I can't. I mean, from the moment I open my eyes, it's absolute misery. I mean, just, as soon as I open my eyes, boom, I have to now figure out how am I going to get money? How am I going to get it? Where am I going to go? Here, there, this, that. And it's complete chaos all day, every day. And I just get to a point where I'm like, that's it. I can't do this anymore. I just did things that were unspeakable things, evil things, sinful things, and, hurting people and, all this type of stuff. And I got to a point where one day I shot my last couple bags of dope. And I said, that's it. I can't do this anymore. I'm just exhausted is an understatement. And I head to the Long Branch train station. I was going to jump in front of the train. That was my idea. I'm just going to end this whole thing. I started on the way. I'm thinking about my family. I'm thinking about what my funeral would be like. I'm thinking about the details of it. And I talk about this stuff in the book. And, I felt like I should just go in the hospital and tell them how I'm feeling. Something was really drawing me to go into the hospital. So I did, because it's on the way. You got to pass the hospital to get to the train station. So I go in the hospital, I sit down, I tell them what's going on. They put me in the psych ward, the psychiatric ward there. I had been there before. I'm there for like 2 days. And my mother found out where I was, and she asked me, "Do you need anything?" I said, "Mom, there's a Bible on my nightstand. If you could bring me that Bible." So she brings me the Bible. I think Keswick gave it to me. I'm certain of that. So she brings me the Bible, and I'm in there like 2:00 in the morning by myself, and I say something to the effect of, "God, I know you're there, but I feel completely disconnected. I am at my absolute limit with this life. I can't do this anymore. I need to hear something from you. Like, I know you're real, but I need to really know that you're real. So I opened up to a random page, and there's no coincidence. There's only God incidences, right? But I opened this Bible to a random page. It was Psalm 88. And, by the way, I don't hear a whole bunch of people that, say that they got saved from Psalm 88, which I'm surprised about, because if you read that Psalm, for those listening, write it down right now and go look at it later on and read that Psalm. And you tell me that's not the Psalm of a drug addict. I mean, it sounds like somebody who's in the midst of an addiction. That if I could have wrote God a letter in that moment, I know David was going through something else, but if I could have wrote God a letter in that moment, I couldn't have articulated it any better. And it just broke me in half. It just broke something inside of me. And I just felt the guilt and the shame, the conviction. And I dropped to my knees, face to the floor, tears, and just begged Jesus to save me. Please save me. I can't do this anymore. I either kill me or save me, but I can't do this one more day. Something to that effect. And just complete desperation. And I felt Hike, I'm not kidding. There's no exaggeration. You know, when you're a kid and you can't breathe, you're crying so hard, you're gasping for air, and you're just looking for. And I just felt this physical embrace, like a hug from God Himself, and it was like just an unbelievable comfort. I calmed myself down. I went to sleep, and the next morning they asked me. They said, "Look, you don't have health insurance. We got to ask you to leave. You don't. We got to, check you out of here." So I'm like, please don't make me go. I haven't had 2-3 days clean in a long time. And, I wanted to keep the momentum. And they said, look, use our phone, try to get in somewhere. So I called, they gave me a list. It must have been like 10 places. I called every one of those places. I got the same answer. No available beds, no available beds, no available beds. So I get fed up now. I go back to my room. I grabbed a mesh bag of clothes, which was like all I had in the world, material possessions at that, like this little bag of clothes. And I head to the door. There's a big hospital door. They got to buzz you out of it because it's the psych ward, So the woman, I tell her, buzz me out of here. So she goes to hit the buzzer. And in mid-hand motion, like this, the phone rang. And she picked up the phone. She said, it's for you. And it was the director of Keswick, the admittance, like the person who admits you into the rehab at that time. His name was Chaplain Jim Freed. He was a great man, is a great man. And he said, Arman, how you doing? And I said, terrible, Pat. I told him what was going on. And he said, well, he said, a strange thing happened to me last night. I said, what happened? He said, God woke me up out of a dead sleep to tell me He wants you to come back to this place. And the list is like a mile long to get in here. People are waiting. This program, Hike, you know how much hospitals charge for rehab? It's thousands and thousands of dollars. This place, by God's grace, like I said, since the late 1800s, been doing this. But at the time I went there, I don't know what the price is now, and they have a men and a women's program now. It was $500 for 4 months. Room, board, food, everything, constant Bible counseling, et cetera, all the $500. So it was like unbelievable, So he says, God woke me up out of a dead sleep, tells me He wants you to come back to this place. So I'm like, I knew it was my opportunity. And I told God that the night before, I'll do whatever you say to do. So I said, this is my opportunity. I remember getting in the car with my mother, and she drove me to Keswick. And on the way, it's like a 40-minute drive from Long Branch, I was literally looking at the traffic lines going past me and thinking about jumping out of the car while it was moved. That's how strong heroin is, the feeling of, being sick. And because it's not a matter of getting high. After a while, you don't get high anymore. You're just trying to stop the absolute deadness and coldness and, hopelessness inside. And it's like you're being drawn into hell, and it's like that bag of heroin just pulls you out of that hell just for 10, 15, 20 minutes at a clip or whatever, so it's a desperate place to be.
Yeah, it's no joke, heroin. I don't think. I mean, there's a reason why you said earlier the drug dealers don't even touch it and don't want to do business with it. And I don't know if you know any of the data of people overcoming this addiction. It's pretty low.
It's extremely low. And I don't know, if you're following the stories, Hike, but like the Sinaloa cartel, very interesting, came out last week and said they put out a warning to the gang members. They said, if you produce fentanyl, we will kidnap you and kill you. Because that's how, when the Sinaloa cartel starts threatening people, we're going to kill you for producing fentanyl, that's how we're at another level. And we're talking about a drug that's 50 times stronger than heroin. You're talking about something that it's being put into, Percocets, prescription, like lookalikes, so these young kids, 13, 14 years old, they're having a Saturday night party and their friend comes to them and says, hey man, I got a Percocet. And they say, oh, cool. And they take the Percocet and they smoke a joint and they sit down to play a video game or whatever. Next thing you know, the kid turns blue and he's never coming back. And he's not a drug addict. He's just a 14-year-old kid that thought he was taking a Percocet. It's coming in from China by the metric ton. It's being produced places like Wuhan. There's a great book called Fentanyl Inc. If anybody gets a chance, they want to know a little bit more about this subject, I suggest you read that book. It's an eye-opener. In our country, we have no idea. It's not getting the coverage it deserves. Not being spoken about enough. It's not being brought up in our churches enough. It's a massive, massive 100,000 people per year on average. It's unbelievable what's going on.
It just breaks my heart because I think we, like you said, the church doesn't speak on it enough, and if the church doesn't realize that Jesus Christ is the solution for people to find freedom, then who else is going to say it? You know.
Go ahead. Sorry, I was just going to say really quickly. I just wanted to say one thing for the listeners. I think they should know it's a good motivator. One of the things that I'm doing with this book, a big motivation for me, was to give people hope through Jesus Christ so that they can come out on the other side of the pain. My story, not because of me, but because of Jesus, is really the blueprint of what people that are hopeless need to do in order to have hope and to come out on the other side. So what I'm doing is, it's not, I haven't figured out if I'm going to do what I'm going to do permanently yet, but at least for initially what I'm doing is 10% of everything I make from this book is going to go to Keswick Colony of Mercy. Like I said, they're helping countless men and women who are struggling with addiction. I'm also going to give a portion to overdose awareness, etc. Only Christian programs, though. If it's not a Christian faith-based program or ministry, I won't have any part in it, because what does it profit a man if he gains the whole world but loses his soul? We need to, as Christians, we need to be supporting Christian organizations, not other ones. So I think just people should know that.
Great. That's just further reason why people should pick up this book and get a deeper insight into the hotel rooms of your soul. But let's jump back into your testimony. You go back to Keswick, a miracle of miracles. You connect with God. The director is connected to God and gets the memo that this guy is ready to change. Bring him back. So you go back, and did you have like a specific moment and then you're off the drugs and you live happily ever after? what was the process like?
Okay, so this is what happened. This is where it gets interesting. So I go to Keswick. I'm there for 3 weeks with no sleep, zero sleep. I'm talking zero sleep. Now, I mean, I slept half hour here, an hour there, like that.
And this is a common withdrawal symptoms of heroin?
Oh, yes. Super common. So you don't sleep. You just toss and turn and revolve around in your bed. I mean, I had night terrors. I had, demonic type of night terrors, like I was being attacked. Something really weird and strange was happening to me over that 3-week period. And you also, with the lack of sleep, you start to hallucinate. I mean, it's really crazy, and you're just miserable sick. I mean, like flu is, I don't know. It's like a walk in the park. It's like a fantasy land compared to what you go through with withdrawal with heroin. So, 3 weeks I'm going through that. And, I get to a point where finally I can't sleep anymore. I start coming out to there was a fireplace room. We had a fireplace in there, a couple couches. And I just said, you know what, if I'm not going to sleep, I'm going to open my Bible and start reading it. So I just started reading. And I always think about this whenever I watch Pilgrim's Progress is one of the greatest books of all time, hands down. They made a cartoon for kids, and I watch it sometimes with the kids. And, when Christian gets his Bible and he just opens it up and starts reading, he can't put it down. He just keeps reading and reading. The more he reads, the more convicted he is. And the more convicted he is, the more, he's honoring God and drawing closer to the Lord. And that's what was happening to me. I was just sitting there for hours during the night, reading and fascinated with, just like overcome with fascination and joy by what I was reading. So this is going on. It's a 4-month program. The one thing I'll say is a program like this, you're completely surrounded with Christians, with good influence. We woke up and memorized scripture every time we had a meal, we had to memorize scripture and recite it in order to eat, Bible studies in the morning, during breakfast, all throughout the day, everybody you work with. So you're really, really in this protected environment. So I spent 4 months there. I'll never forget this. So I wanted to come home, and they make you set up your church. They make you set up your living, where are you going to go before you leave? So I go home and I say, you know what? I'm going to go visit the Armenian church near me, my local church that I, been to when I was growing up and whatever. So I went there, I talked to the priest, and I sat down and had a conversation with him. And I said, I'm thinking I want this to be my church. And he says, yeah, absolutely. And I told him, I said, they're not very happy with the fact that I want to go to an Armenian Apostolic Church versus any of these other churches. And he said, but you're Armenian. Where else would you go? So it's like, so I came back to church, but there wasn't really, and the people are amazing. I still know many of them to today. But I didn't have the accountability and the relationships that I needed at that time in that place in order to, I think, I'm not blaming it on that. This is all my decision making. I got home, bad living situation where I was living, just not knowing how to live like a believer. I had no idea how to live like this. I've been spending from the time I was 13, give or take, to the time I was, 27, 28 years old, living a particular kind of lifestyle. And the Christian life, though I had been living it for 4 months, was completely foreign to me. And, I fell right back into where I was before. And that was a really kind of a hopeless feeling, because I'm like, man, God couldn't even save me. That's how I felt. And it was a real downer. But what ended up happening is, and I write about this in the book as well. I write about all this stuff in the book, but my father came to me and he begged me. He said, listen, I have a opportunity. A good friend of his, was almost like an uncle to me. His name was Michael. He said he has a connection to the Salvation Army in Brooklyn. I was fascinated with your 2 podcasts ago. It was really, people should go check that out. What was his nickname? Joe
the Turk.
Joe the Turk. Right. Yeah. So people should go check that podcast. That was really amazing. But yeah, so I went to the Salvation Army in Brooklyn. I was there for a few months, and it was just such a great thing, because I realized, no, I'm saved. I just tripped and fell. It was just like, you got kids, your son, he's trying to walk, he trips and falls. You pick him up, you dust him off. All right, come on, let's go. Let's keep trying, So I just tripped and fell, and God just picked me up, dusted me off, loved me, gave me grace, extended mercy. And once I realized that, okay, it was almost like, it was like a rematch with me and the enemy, and I just said, okay, this time I'm going to do it right. I was in Brooklyn. I was right around the corner from Bed-Stuy. And, people will know that from that's where Biggie Smalls grew up. And, it's a rough, but that's a weird part of Brooklyn, because, and you know Brooklyn too, but you get one neighborhood is, you get this is a nice,
gentrified
kind of a neighborhood. Yeah. And then you go 2-3 blocks over, and it's, completely the opposite. So anyway, I had enough rope to hang myself, so to speak.
So what do you mean by rope? What do you mean by the rope phrase?
Well, that neighborhood, like I said, there was plenty of drugs, very close to me. I could have, at any given time, I could have went back to that life. But I ended up, what happened was, my probation officer, I had been ducking my probation officer for a while. And I just went to Brooklyn without even telling them, and joined, this program in the Salvation Army. So I was there for a few months, and now I'm right back to where I was when I left Keswick. I'm in a great spot, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. So the counselor gets on the phone with the probation officer and says, look, this guy, he's doing really well. He's even helping other guys. We'd like to keep him here if you would allow it. And they said, no, if you don't send him back today, we're going to come get him. So I remember being on the train hike, and I'm on my way home, and I'm just petrified, because I was thinking, as soon as I get off the train back to Jersey, something's going to happen, and I'm going to just this magical power is going to come over me, and I'm just going to go. But that I stepped off of that train, that magical power never came, that, dark force never came. And I was able to just, completely, God just pieced my life together, just piece by piece, inch by inch. I came home, I had, like I said, I had nothing. And I was walking to and from the gym every day and to school to get my high school diploma. Then I got a job as a waiter. Then I got another job. Then I got another job. I'm working 3 jobs. I'm, hustling. I'm trying to do all the things that I can do. And God just presenting me with opportunities And, my mother was nice enough to help me to get a car. So, I did that and got a car, got my license back. I paid off all the court cases, I closed all my court cases, paid off all my fines. I paid off anybody I owed, in the street or wherever. And, now I'm in this place where I'm just like a year clean. About a year from the time I was saved, give or take. And, I met my wife, and I met her at a friend of mine's wedding. And, I had to tell her exactly where I was, pretty much right away, because I didn't want to fall in love with her, have her fall in love. Like, from the time we met, we were inseparable. It was love at first sight. Once we met that one night, we never, left each other. So I left each other's side. I wanted to make sure I told her right away, what was going on, because I didn't want to get too far along. And she says, no, I don't want anything to do. A lot of girls, praise God for my wife. When she met me, I was living in my mother's basement at 28 years old with $0 to my name. I had just gotten saved. I had just got my license, just finished probation and all this stuff. And she saw potential in me. So I'm grateful to her. I love her with all my heart. She's so great.
Amazing stuff. So then the support system ended up forming itself. You got busy with work. You found your spouse. And that list of objectives, was that on that train ride back from Brooklyn to Asbury or area? Was that when you wrote the list of objectives?
I'd be lying if I said it was actually on the train, but I know it was sometime close to that. Could have been, that day or the next day, but sometime very close to when I got home. I'm like, I got to write a little bit of a blueprint here of what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it.
That's amazing. The power of goals and writing the blueprint and seeing it all come to fruition, especially this book you just now released. Congratulations on that. I just want to conclude with kind of giving hope, because this is the theme, because there's a lot of people who've been sexually abused. And I've counseled many people, and there's freedom on the other side with Jesus's help, but there's a lot of shame connected to that. Any words of wisdom there first, and then I want to just jump with hope over just overcoming addictions in general.
Absolutely. Well, so people who pick up the book are going to definitely read. I talk very vividly in the book. I speak very vividly, or write very vividly about how it was that I got peace, after all that. And a big part of it was the forgiveness piece. And reason being, you're held captive by unforgiveness. People don't realize, and you don't have to wait till somebody comes to you and apologizes to forgive them. And, if you're somebody like me, I've been forgiven of so much, that the question was posed to me, you've been forgiven of so much. How could you not extend that forgiveness to somebody else? And I know you're going to conclude, so I don't want to say too much. All I will say is that forgiveness piece is a huge part of letting you out of the prison of, the guilt and the shame and the anger and frustration and confusion and all those different things. And the enemy is working overtime right now with all those things in our culture, in our society, in the West in particular. So, these are things that we need to be aware of, but the forgiveness piece is a huge, huge part of that.
So like not acknowledging that it happened, talking to someone, and also choosing to forgive the person, and that begins the healing process. It opens the floodgates to process it, to call it evil, but also to let God judge the situation and seek healing from it.
Absolutely. What I actually did was I had a really great pastor. He was a really funny guy. He was a Puerto Rican guy, tough guy from Brooklyn, and he was a stick-up kid, which I don't know if you know what that is, but that's just somebody who goes around and sticks people up all day. That's what he did for a living, was just rob people. This guy, his whole life was so radically transformed by God through Jesus. You would have never known that this was his prior life. And, he said to me, he said, what I want you to do is, I talk about all this in the book, so people you gotta read this part. It's really good. But he says to me, I want you to write a letter to the man that did this to you. And I want you to write everything down. You're not going to send it to him, but just write everything down and get it out of you. And once you do that, you could do whatever you want with the letter. And what I chose to do with it after I read it poured my heart out, wrote everything down, and I put it in the fire, and I watched it go up in smoke. And with that smoke also went all of those years of, negative feelings and anger and frustration, like I said before. So that's a really good practice if people want to do that. It's, writing can be an incredible way to heal, to remember things in detail, and then to discard them,
So how much has been writing this book been a therapeutic process for you?
Oh my gosh, Hike. I all I can say about that is, and we're gonna have to do a second podcast on just the writing part of it, but it's, when you really, really delve into, Socrates said something that was very interesting to me, a quote that he had that was, the unexamined life is not worth living. Now, to some degree, we all examine our lives in one way, shape, or form. I think if we ever really examined our lives fully, we would, wouldn't be able to deal with it. But when you think about things in detail, where you're gonna write about the way things look and feel and smell, the lighting in the room, the people that were there, the attitudes they had, all the details of it, it starts to open up things that you didn't even know were there. I thought I'd forgotten a lot of this stuff, so I think healing in a way that I can't even explain, because the book is not just about sexual abuse, childhood sexual abuse. It's not just about heroin addiction. It's about all those things. But, a big piece of it was father-son relationship, family, broken relationships, broken home, just so many different facets of life. And there was so much more in this book than I realized was going to be there. The beginning of the book, the ending of the book, I didn't know I was going to write that. I just sat down with the Lord at 4 a.m. and I sat there with my Bible. I sat there in prayer and I said, God, I want to write this book and I want it to be for your glory. And I want you to get 100% glory from this book. You tell me what to write. Whatever you say to write, that's what I'm going to write. I wrote 20,000 words, which is a big deal for a high school dropout to write 20,000 words. I wrote 20,000 words and decided I needed to throw it in the garbage and start over again, because, Jesus just kind of, how the Lord is. When you get something that is kind of from God, it was like, this is not it, and I had to throw it out and start over. And I'm so glad I did that, because this is a completely different book than anything I could have ever imagined writing. It's and the therapeutic part, forget it. I don't even know what to say about it. Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah, I'm excited for part two of your. This is probably part one of your life. And there's part two coming up where you're going to help lead many people free from addictions, pointing people to Jesus Christ and the redemptive hope there is for everyone, regardless of what's happened to you or regardless of what you have done. We worship a transformative, graceful God, and it's just an awesome time to hear your testimony, brother. And I would love to have you back on. We could talk more specifics. Thank you for sharing your story, brother. Any concluding thoughts before we wrap this conversation up?
No, if I could just, I'm so grateful for you, brother. So grateful for what you're doing. If I could ask people to like and subscribe this channel, because Hayek is really doing something I think is really amazing. Follow him on Spotify. All these things really, really help. And we're just two brothers today connecting, and we've never even met. And I feel like I've known him forever. I love him automatically, and grateful for him. And I just ask you guys to do that. And if you could do me a favor, that would really help me. And, the mission I'm on with this book is to, if you can pick up a copy, if you can, Christmas is coming, maybe think of somebody in your life. We've all been touched by addiction in some way, shape, or form, or we know people who have. If you could think about somebody you want to buy this gift, book for as a gift, and if you could write me an honest review on Amazon, and there is a link in the back of the book, a QR code. You could just scan it. It'll take you right to where you can leave a review. Incredibly helpful for me, the algorithm, and of course your prayers for Hayek and for me and for for all of us as believers. We need it right now more than ever.
Thank you for the plug, man. Usually it's the other way around. I'm grateful for that.
Absolutely, bro.
All right, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning into the end of this conversation. I want you all to have a blessed week. Pick up a copy of the book. The links will be provided in the description. Thank you for watching to the end of this program. And remember, there's always hope. And God bless you. Have a great week.